I know it sounds crazy when you only give a point higher, but like it makes a difference. It's only out of 10.
Yeah. I know it's only out of 10. Out of 100. 70.
Maybe we should do that. Hi everyone, welcome back to After Broadway, the podcast where we deep dive into anything and everything musical theater. I'm Tara.
I'm Stefania.
And in today's episode, we're back with another iteration of Off to Stratford, and we're talking about La Cage aux Folles, sorry for my French accent, and Something Rotten. Now, this isn't the first time that we've talked about these two shows, because if you flash back to like 2 episodes ago, we had Heather Kosick and Devin Michael Brown on the show to talk about both shows because they're in both of these shows. And that was kind of like a pre-show to this episode. So here we are to discuss both of these musicals for this season.
This was a fun day. Road trip to Stratford. We went in from the morning. We saw Something Rotten as the matinee.
It was actually a very stressful way in.
It was actually stressful. I forgot about that. We almost didn't make it. Actually, let's shout out to the volunteer. We make it. We are running to the theater. The show starts at what?
Respectably 1:30? On the sidewalk, and she's like, "Run on the grass."
She's like, "Run on the lawn." We're like, "Okay." Did it start at 1:30 or was it 2?
I don't know.
It doesn't matter, but
it doesn't matter. There was a big car accident on the highway coming from Toronto to Stratford. So what should have taken like
last second trying to get there.
Yes, what should have taken like an hour 40 took like 2:25 ish.
And we had tickets ready for us at the box office, not on our phones already. So we're like, okay, what if we park and someone goes in and then
conveniently found a spot right away. It was great.
Yeah, no, it was great. We made it. We parked. We survived. But yes,
we even managed to take the playbill picture before the lights went down.
You're so right. We did. So we saw Something Rotten at the matinee. Then we walked around the beautiful town of Stratford, which is a stunning day trip if you're in need of somewhere to visit. Has like really cute shops, beautiful restaurants, a beautiful like riverfront. So fun.
Swans.
And then swans. And then we had pizza for dinner. Actually, we went to Pazzo and we had the themed Something Rotten pizza for dinner.
We did.
Which was really good.
It was good.
It was good. And then it had like roasted garlic, like a full roasted clove of garlic.
And blue cheese. So like our breath was smelling
it was
real
rotten.
good.
It was rotten. It's Something Rotten. They also had one for the show I'm about to talk about. I think there was like a Zaza pizza, but we didn't have that one. And then we saw La Cage aux Folles that evening at the 8 p.m. show. So two very different shows, I think, with two, I don't know, tonally very different in my opinion, but a really interesting juxtaposition for this season's musicals at Stratford Festival.
Yeah, I think so. If you flash back all the way to probably last September, we talked about both of these shows in our season preview for Toronto and surrounding areas. And if you flash back even further, actually, I don't know if that was live on the episode, but Jen Ryder-Shaw did tell us that La Cage was coming.
We knew Something Rotten at that point. We have sources. We knew Something Rotten at that point, but we didn't know about La Cage. So we just outed her as exposing.
Yeah, sorry.
Just like giving us the tea,
if
you will, last season. This year, it's about the same time of year, but we actually do know the 2 musicals for next season. And I think we'll get into an in-depth discussion on our feelings about that later. But if you just want the tea right now, the 2 musicals for next season are Annie and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
And the reason that we know about Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is because, let's shout him out. I feel like we've read many of his articles before, but Joshua Chong, who writes for the Toronto Star, he did the work and reached out to Stratford.
We need to go even further back. Sorry, not to interrupt. We need to go even further back to J. Kelly Nestruck making me download a Threads account because he said... Yeah, no, this is important. He said on Twitter, he's like, I'm putting the Stratford rumor on Threads to make people download Threads, and it made me download Threads. I was I gotta
go. Was there like a cryptic message, or did he just say that that's what it was?
That it was Dirty Rotten Scoundrels? No, he just straight up said it was Dirty Rotten Scoundrels on
Threads.
Threads.
There was no even like puzzle. It was just
not even
go
an
to
emoji.
Threads.
No. He just said on Twitter, go to Threads. And then on Threads, he said Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. It was
Oh
very
my God.
clear.
You just saying emoji, like, flash back to us trying to decode the Mervish season via emoji. That was literally my favorite time. I love that so much.
Oh my God, that time, but it was an unofficial emoji.
It was unofficial.
Like, it was unofficial. I feel like Stratford's also done emojis in the past.
They did last year, like, playlists. It was like, here's this person's playlist to try and figure out, like, what the shows will be. That includes, obviously, the Shakespeare's. But we'll get to our thoughts on those two shows later. Should we start, like, in order of what we saw on the day?
For sure. I agree. Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so I don't think we're going to do a full, like, synopsis here, because if you want to listen to a 30-second synopsis of both shows, go listen to our interview with Devin and Heather, because they both gave fun ones. But we will do what we normally do, and that's talk about, like, our relationship to these shows. So, Steph, what is your relationship, if any, to Something Rotten?
Something Rotten is a show I had a vague knowledge of, understanding of. Probably my strongest connection to Something Rotten is they had Heidi Blickenstaff, when it was on Broadway, did a Broadway.com vlog, which I did watch every episode of. I was watching one earlier today, just to, remind me of them. And what I remember was her talking about, Shakespeare's kind of posse, the Leather Boys, they called them. And then Christian Borle would do a segment on the Broadway.com vlog, like a book club every week, because he loves comics and books. And so that was kind of my biggest knowledge of it. I remember their Tony performance. They did a musical on the Tonys. But I never felt the urge to delve deeper into this musical. And so I really was going in fairly fresh, seeing it this summer at Stratford Festival.
I was in New York, I guess, during a summer when Something Rotten was on, because I remember seeing, like, the tomatoes on, like, a stage door, like, the logo. And that's, like, very vivid to me, but I wasn't, like, quite sure what that show was. I definitely watched the Tonys that year, but it was really a blind spot to me until my friend Alex told me to listen to the cast recording, because she loved it. It was, like, one of her favorite cast recordings to listen to. She never saw the show, but she was, like, obsessed with the cast recording. And then during the pandemic, I started to, like, dabble in the cast recording and, like, watch a little bit of the vlogs, like, here and there. I think the cast recording is good on its own. It's one of those shows that, like, you don't really need to know the full storyline to be able to understand what's happening in the cast recording, which isn't always the case. And the music is pretty fun. I looked up today. It's Wayne and Carrie Kirkpatrick, who also did Doubtfire, and I was like, checks. Oh. I see it. I
do see it.
I don't know. Yes. I haven't listened to that full cast recording, but there's a couple songs we've talked about on this podcast before. Steph's favorite song ever, What the Hell?
What the hell? This was not supposed to happen.
She's in something. She's doing a work. She's doing a workshop.
Empire Records. She's in Empire Records.
Yes, girl. We love to see it.
See you soon.
On the streets of New York when I was there. Do you remember when I was there in April? I texted you twice. I was like, I think I've seen her 2 days in a row. She must have been doing, like, a workshop somewhere.
Working.
She met these people in line for The Notebook when I was at the Rush line. And then I saw her, like, walking to the subway. And I was like, oh, twice in a row. She's working. But yeah, that's really all that I knew about Something Rotten as well. Before we get to your thoughts and my thoughts, I do want to say that in the last few years, no one has talked about a musical as much as people have talked about Something Rotten coming out of Stratford. Like, everybody is talking about this show. Every review I've seen, every article, every tweet, every comment is just how much everybody loves Something Rotten. And I don't think I've seen that much, like, Toronto traction on a Stratford show. I mean, Rent was, like, kind of, but not as much as this. I feel like everyone is talking about this show. So that's kind of interesting for, like, a Stratford production.
I do agree. I do see a lot of people talking about it, which I find very interesting. I think there's many reasons for it. When we were there were 2 mid-show standing ovations. So clearly the audience is responding to something in this show. People are getting so excited, so thrilled by it. I mean, the production value is great, and I really do think
and the talent is great.
The talent is great. And I do think this musical really taps into like a theater lover's love of musicals. It's almost like in certain points, let's say like a Cliff's Notes of musical theater throughout the past 100 years it gives you. So it really like taps into that. But yeah, I do agree that there is, let's say, a lot of chatter about Something Rotten that's making its way back to the big city. Maybe, I mean, Spamalot was also a hit last year, but I agree that a lot of people are talking about Something Rotten. A lot of people, I don't know, people on the street.
No, like I've heard it from like random people, and then like whenever I've told anyone that I've seen, it's like, oh, I've heard about the show, like should I go see the show? And I think you and I have like different perspectives a little bit on Something Rotten, but I know where you're coming from. I just maybe don't care as much about it. So what were your thoughts on this production as a whole, but also Something Rotten?
Of this production as a whole. From this show was like not for me at its core, I think. There were definitely moments that were fun, and during that first kind of big production number that Nostradamus sings, what's it called? That got the standing ovation. Oh, it's a musical. Like, I teared up. I experienced joy in that moment. But I think at the end of the day, for me, I felt that, like, let's say, like, characterization and storytelling were maybe sacrificed for these, like, viral, bombastic moments. And I just didn't feel like the story had very much to it, or the characterization had very much to it. And what was getting people excited was, let's say, references to previous musicals. And to me, like, a reference is not necessarily a joke. So when everyone's laughing at a reference, I'm like, I don't get why it's funny to just say the name of a musical, or to sing a line from a musical. It almost feels, well, like, I'm really going in like right off the top, but it almost feels like lazy writing.
We got 2 shows to talk about, so you gotta go.
No, I'm ready. I'm going in. And this is critique of the writing, like, not even, I like, leave Stratford out of this. My critique.
Okay, we'll leave them out.
Like, my critique is that a reference is not a joke, and to just say the name of something or to sing the melody of something that people are already familiar with, and to not expand on that in any way is not writing. It's just repeating. It's just repetition.
Who wrote it?
Comparison, I have no idea. Let's find out. And the comparison I'm going to draw is to a movie series, a franchise I have not seen, but I'm about to do it anyway. The comparison I'm going to draw is to, like, Deadpool and Wolverine in that kind of joke structure. I feel like I've told you this before, like that kind of joke structure, in that, are they making jokes, or are they just saying things you're already familiar with and expecting you to laugh? Like, are they just,
like, as someone that's seen all 3 of those Deadpool movies, sometimes they are making jokes, but a lot of the times it is like, you know that reference? Yeah, so I understand.
Yeah, it's just like yes, of course I know musicals. And this is, and my, like, the final kind of, like, you know, point of that is, you know, they're referencing and playing music from these musicals that we love, that we already love.
Yeah.
And then expecting the show to get that same goodwill that we already give those other shows, just like automatically by referencing them. And I don't know if the show itself earns that love in the way that those musicals have done the work to, like, earn that like heartstring pulling that is done.
It's written by Carrie Kirkpatrick, who also did music and lyrics, and also John O'Farrell, but it says, like, conceived by Carrie and Wayne Kirkpatrick. So I feel like this was probably just, like, their kind of passion project.
Sure.
I understand everything you're saying. I think if you tell me about, like, the concept, I said I wasn't going to give a synopsis, but, like, for anybody that doesn't know, it's basically about, like, Nigel and Nick Bottom, who are writing a musical, or not writing a musical, they're writing a play, and they're, like, kind of they're always competing with Shakespeare. Shakespeare is, like, God in this time. And Nigel meets Nostradamus, who is, like, tells him that the key to win everybody over is to write a musical. So then they write a musical, Omelette, it's supposed to be Hamlet. There's the, like, joke there. And then, like, there's a whole bunch of other side stories, but it's kind of just about, like, the making of a show. So, like, if you were to tell me that as, like, a person that loves shows, I'm like, that's a great idea. I think that's a really fun idea, a concept for a musical. Can't wait to see how you do it. I definitely agree with you about the musical references. I feel like they're just filing them off as if there's like, here's a list of 100, and every time they say one, they like cross it off the list, kind of a situation. I read on Reddit today, not about this production, just about Something Rotten in general. Someone compared it to Star Kid, and I was like, oh, that checks out. That makes sense. Star Kid's very like parody of other things, and they really like nail in the references whenever they can. Specifically, I'm thinking of like a Harry Potter musical. It's very like on the nose, and I think parts of that are funny, but that stuff is like not my humor. But I know that people are like obsessed with Star Kid, so I can understand how people can be like obsessed with Something Rotten. I think for me, at times I'm just like, it's not that deep, so I don't really care that much. That like people are having a great time. I'm happy that everyone's like really enjoying it. So I think my overarching theme is like, I'm not quite bothered because I just don't think it's that deep. But I'm not saying that we're like writing an award-winning like Pulitzer Prize story. I also think for this specific production, the cast is incredible, which really,
they're working so hard,
really propels it. If the cast was not doing what they were doing, I probably would have hated this show. Like, I could flat out say that.
They're working so hard, and like always, Stratford Productions are just of the highest quality in terms of set, in terms of costumes, in terms of acting, in terms of directing even. Like, you know, for me, this one really comes down to musical choice. And I do understand that there is many different types of audience that they're trying to please. And you have to know the demographic of your core audience. And it seems like the core audience that is coming to this is loving this. And it's also, like we said before, such a perfect fit for Stratford because of the Shakespeare references. Like, it really just takes, you know, previous shows that Stratford has already done, plus, you know, Shakespeare himself is a character in the show, and Shakespeare has so much like history at the Stratford Festival. So it's such a perfect fit for this festival in terms of audience and in terms of like the subject matter of the musical. But yeah, I just wish this musical gave me something a bit more. I'm gonna actually draw one more comparison. Well, I think I drew this comparison to you before. The other comparison I have is to Book of Mormon, which is another musical that references a lot of musicals. And I've also come on this podcast and gone on record in that I don't think Book of Mormon is a musical that holds up to multiple viewings. I think that first viewing is the strongest, but I will say the first time I ever saw it, loved it. It was so good. And then, you know, subsequently you're like, okay, I see the holes, and I know they've like rejigged it a little bit now. But what I'll say is the musical references in Book of Mormon are so purposeful and are really integral to storytelling. They're using certain musical theater tropes and even, let's say, certain melodies or musical styles
without saying like, this is from this.
Right. Exactly. Without saying it. And also to tell the story, you know, when he does, what is it? I Believe, which is like, I have confidence from the sound of music. Even if you don't necessarily like recognize the song immediately or know what he's referencing, you know that they're referencing that certain point in a musical, that like I Want song, and it's part of the storytelling. Or like
You and Me But Mostly
like
Me,
You and Me But Mostly Me,
The Wizard and I, like,
yes, or like Salt Lake City is like, you know, somewhere that's green, like,
and
part of the world.
What's it called? Like what's the finale called? It's like You Can't Stop the Beat. That's what it is.
Yes, exactly. So it takes parts of musicals that you love. Like, to me, Book of Mormon feels like much more of a love letter to musicals than this show does. Like, Something Rotten almost feels like it's like making fun.
I think it's a parody. Like, and
yeah,
I know
no,
that
for sure, and it is.
And I don't know that Book of Mormon is necessarily a parody, or if it's more just like a comedic show.
Yes, Book of Mormon is obviously a comedy,
also,
but
like,
I don't...
No disrespect to, like, Carrie and Wayne Kirkpatrick, because, like, I don't know you personally, but I just think that Trey Stone and Matt Parker are, like, better writers. They've been doing this
for sure
forever on a very successful TV series. You know what I mean? Like, South Park has lots of issues, don't get me wrong, but like there's a reason that show's been on air for what, like 30 years? Like, it's crazy.
A long time.
Yeah.
And even, I don't know which one of them, maybe it's Trey, maybe it's Matt, is a huge musical fan.
Yes.
And they also had Bobby Lopez come in, who talk about a parody musical, Avenue Q. Talk about a parody musical, Avenue Q, but also did kind of similar things in referencing musicals and musical styles, and kind of using those things to their advantage to tell a story instead of just like repeating and regurgitating things that they've seen in order to get a laugh. This sounds so harsh. Like, wow.
No, I think it's interesting, and like this also might sound harsh, but I'm like, a show like Something Rotten is maybe for people that aren't seeing as many shows as we see. Sure. So when they hear Les Mis, they're like, oh my god, Les Mis. When you hear Cats, you're like, oh my god, that's Cats. Like, it's for, I feel like what you were saying about like when people recognize the references, it makes them laugh, is almost similar to how I feel sometimes with like Moulin Rouge when people recognize the songs and they laugh. Yeah. It's like, oh, I know that, so I need to react. So I feel like it's kind of on the same vein. I also will say I think Act 1 is much stronger than Act 2 for Something Rotten. I really like got lost in Act 2 until we like bring it all together when they're actually putting that like musical on stage. But there's a lot of like filler. There's a lot of characters in this show that I think is also maybe the issue with the storyline, is that if you're going to set us out on this journey with like Nick and Nigel Bottom and then also Shakespeare, I don't need like 10 other things happening in the background.
Just like simplify.
Yes. Don't get me wrong. Like, as we said at the top of this episode, like there were moments I was laughing like out loud. There were very funny moments. I will say, like, most of the time as I was just watching the show, I think the thing that I enjoyed the most was like, wow, Mark however you say his last name, who played Nick Bottom. I was like, this man is on a marathon for 2 hours and like 40 minutes straight here, and like congrats to him for doing what he's doing, because to me he was like the standout performer, along with, we love him, Dan Shamroy, in this show.
Who was I gonna say? Who played
had an understudy.
Shakespeare. We did have an understudy for Nigel.
Shakespeare was great.
Nick. Jeff Lillico who played Shakespeare. I think that like that anytime Shakespeare was on screen, that was my favorite part of the show. That kind of comedy just served me, and it made me laugh just anytime he was on stage. I was like, I love this character.
Yeah,
because there was like just the perfect amount of him.
I also think, like, again, not to dismiss like the audience here, but like I don't know a Stratford audience is seeing, again, as many shows as we're seeing. So forget the storyline. To see a production like you're seeing is just like really impressive in general. So I think that's what makes people feel the way that they feel about these shows. Like, but I'm saying, like, as I said at the beginning here about, I'm hearing so much chatter about this musical. Like, there are many Reddit pages being like, this is my favorite Stratford production I've ever seen. So it's just like very interesting what's hitting with the audience.
I'm in the minority. I know I'm in the minority. I guess for me, whenever I come here and I say
but you're not in the minority on Stratford. You're in the minority on like maybe Something Rotten mark. You know?
No, I know what I mean is on this show. Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, let's say some friends I've talked to in person feel similarly to me.
Yeah.
Who I've talked about the show. I do come on. Sometimes I feel like I'm being harsh, but I do think, I always want to be honest, because I feel like if someone else, let's say on previous shows, has had similar opinions to me, they might know that they're not going to love this one just based on what I've loved. And like, I hope I'm able to help matchmake people to shows and like have accurate information for what people are seeing and saying, you know what, I usually pretty much agree with what Steph says, so maybe I'll skip this one, or, I never agree with Steph, so I'll definitely hit this one up.
What we've learned this year is that Steph doesn't like musical comedies except for Mean Girls. That's what we've learned this year.
That's so true. Mean Girls was self-aware, and I like that about it.
Other than that, I'm like, every other musical comedy, you've been like, not for me.
Yeah, I think there's just like a very specific humor style that
I also think like, here we are like really tearing it apart, but I also think musical comedy is so hard to achieve. Like, it's very difficult to make everybody happy, and I don't think it's actually possible to make everybody happy in the musical 100%. Comedy realm. You really have to like figure out your tone and then go with it. I think the only musical, like minus like Mormon and like, I don't know, some of the like Hairspray, like the big ones, I think in like recent years, the only one that's like really, really worked for me is The Prom.
Love The Prom. Loved The Prom.
Because it kind of teetered on like both sides.
Because it was like making fun of itself. Like, maybe, you know, it loved musicals, but it also, I don't know, the absurdity of musicals. That was another one that had a lot of musical references in a way that maybe because the characters were just so over the top.
They were crazy.
There's kind of like, there's already, let's say, like a corniness inherent in a musical. And so matching that with comedy, maybe, like, for me anyway, they don't always mesh well, like certain styles of comedy with the kind of inherent earnestness, corniness of, you know, breaking into song to express your emotions. And maybe they'll fight with each other sometimes. Did
you like this more or less than Spamalot?
I like anything more than Spamalot. Sorry to Spamalot. No, I like this more than Spamalot.
Okay, I'm just curious because, like, that to me is, like, that's so far on the, like, I'm putting comedy in air quotes side because I literally don't find Spamalot funny at all. But I know that, like, if you like that Monty Python humor, then you'll be obsessed with it because, like, that's just for you. So, yes. Yeah, I think we just need to find a comedy musical for you.
I did love The Prom. I loved The Prom. I don't know, like, is Legally Blonde a musical comedy?
Yeah, but iconic. But it teeters, right?
Maybe that's just different. Yeah, this is a good question. Maybe we need to delve deeper into musical comedies. Should we actually talk about next season now? Because, like,
sure, let's talk about it, because speaking of musical comedies, we're getting to musical comedies, and, like, here we are about to continue our, like, negative fest on this episode. I'm really uninspired by this upcoming Stratford season. I agree. This has nothing to do, I mean, again, everything that we just said, I'm sure both productions of Annie and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels will be great performance-wise, technical-wise, but, like, I don't like Annie, and that's not anything to do with
I've
the
actually
festival.
Never seen Annie. So
you haven't seen either of these. These are two brand new ones for you. I saw Annie. Actually,
I've listened to Dirty Rotten Scoundrels a bit, though.
Have you seen the movie?
I'm a big Norbert Leo Butz fan. So that's where I'm at with that.
You haven't even seen, like, Annie movie?
No.
Like a version?
My biggest thing with Annie was I worked at a summer camp in the year 2015, which was pretty much right after the Annie movie starring, like, Jamie Foxx and Convention Wallace came out.
Horrible.
Which I've
Cameron
never
Diaz.
seen. Yeah. Again, I've never seen this movie.
I have.
But the summer camp was for kids aged 4 to 6, and it was a dance camp, so it was mostly girls. Every day, I'm playing that Annie soundtrack. They were obsessed with the Annie soundtrack.
So you know
like
it.
the remixed "It's a Hard Knock Life."
Oh yeah,
like the remixed. Like from that movie. The remixed
I know the remix.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I knew I was
Annie.
playing every day the remixed Annie music.
I will shout out.
The kids loved it.
The only Annie that I've seen on stage was actually featuring past guest of the podcast, Jenny Wise, who was playing Annie at Young People's Theater. And I really did enjoy that production because I was in a theater, like, surrounded by children. Young People's Theater is just kind of like a totally... I don't think that Annie should, like, leave Young People's Theater and, like, go to Stratford. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's kind of, like, where it belongs.
There is something to say about doing a show centered around children, which they did... in 2019 with Billy Elliot as well.
Also, sorry to interrupt you for a second. The reason that this is, like, happening is because there's currently an open casting call for children for Annie.
For Annie and the orphans. But yeah, like, they did Billy Elliot in 2019 and they're doing Annie this year. Both shows, like, full of kids, and there is something to having a big professional production starring kids that kids can go to and, let's say, be inspired to want to be on stage and want to become actors and to, like, you know, see it as a possibility for them. So yes, I do think, you know, Annie has been cited by many, many actors and performers as a gateway musical for them. And so, you know, we have to set up a gateway for the next generation. For me personally, in my 30s, I don't care.
No, I know. And also,
I don't have that, like, emotional, youthful connection to it from but also, when, like, I was young.
Can we pick a new show for children to latch onto? You know what I mean?
But this is the thing, and I love Stratford. I'm always impressed when I go to Stratford by the production. Like, I'm a fan of the festival as a whole. I do think that they, especially for their musicals, which are potentially their moneymakers, Like, they want to pick things with big name recognition
100%.
to have audiences coming back and to have people excited, people coming from Toronto, coming from surrounding areas to see it. If they pick something, you know, let's say like new and unknown, you know, you have that risk of people skipping it because it's unfamiliar. So I understand you're in like a difficult position.
I don't mean it in the sense of like unknown. I just mean it in like, let's move on from Annie and find another kid show
do
that
think
other
the world
people
needs to move on from Annie. But I've never seen it, so you know, how can we move on if I've never
Catch
seen
us here next year being like, Annie
us here
was
next year.
phenomenal.
I don't know.
And yeah, I really don't know anything about Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. I just know it's in the same vein of like Spamalot, Something Rotten, and whatever other.
Yeah, to me, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, it's kind of in that same vein of those shows. Like, it's speaking to the same audience as those shows. I believe the original Broadway cast was Norbert Leo Butz and like John Lithgow.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Cherie Renee Scott.
Was this a movie also?
It was a movie.
Okay.
It was a movie. The movie starred Steve Martin and Michael Caine.
Okay, so
love to see that.
Yeah.
The score is Tony Yazbek. So, you know, I like him. I like Tony.
We like Tony.
He loves to do a movie adaptation for his musical. I don't think he's ever done an original musical, which is fine.
Has he not?
Everything is adapted, I think. Well, because his work as a musical composer, The Full Monty, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Woman on the Verge, The Band's Visit, Tootsie.
Oh, true. I was like, The Band's Visit, but The Band's Visit was actually a movie. So what am I saying?
And then he's got something else called Dead Outlaw, but that does not look like.
Am I making up that he's working on the Mia Farrow, Patti LuPone play?
I mean, that's possible.
Don't quote me, but that's this season, like on Broadway, like in a couple months.
Yeah. Is that The Roommate? No.
Yeah. Is it?
Mia Farrow, Patti LuPone. Okay, I'm looking. The Roommate. Producer. Okay, The Roommate.
I might be lying.
No. Let's look it up. I'm on Playbill. I'm seeing. Jack O'Brien. It's a comedy. It's a play, though.
No, I know, but there's music in it. It's like it's someone's working on it. It's like underscored by somebody because it's in the same track of like Jack Antonoff is doing Romeo and Juliet.
Wow. So
we're gonna have plays this season in the score category. Everybody, multiple plays possibly.
The Roommate Broadway score.
This is really irrelevant to the conversation, but now we're here.
Oh no, you're right.
Knew it.
Tony winner David Yazbek to compose original music for The Roommate on Broadway. Okay, love that for him. Yeah, I like.
Sorry, was I saying Tony Yazbek because we also love Tony Yazbek?
We also said Tony. I definitely said Tony already. Also earlier, I definitely was like, love Tony, love Tony's work. And
we meant David. We meant David, but we also love Tony.
We love them all Yazbeks.
One's a dancer, one's a composer.
Sorry to this confusion that we caused here.
I'm like Googling it, like Tony Yazbek is not in The Roommate. That's because no, he's not.
That's David Yazbek. Yeah. So anyway, that's how I feel. So yeah, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, again, it's speaking to the exact same audience that I felt like Spamalot was speaking to, that Something Rotten is speaking to, which again, they've had great success. Like, I think Spamalot was more successful than Rent last summer. I think
which is wild because Rent literally like changed my life last summer.
And I preferred Rent to Spamalot, but again, that's personal taste. I think Something
also
Rotten
like
is having more success than
literal like favorite people were in Rent, so like it was really hard not to love that, you know.
For sure. I loved Rent. Rent was
actually
stunning.
we literally Steph and I, this is irrelevant again, but like Steph and I we went to see My Fair Lady on the weekend, and we like had a discussion about like the direction choices of Rent. And we were like, there were moments that were so great. We were talking about like direction in general of like inspired and not inspired. And Rent was really inspired direction.
Yeah, I loved what Tom Allison did. And like, what a segue, Tom Allison.
Wait, before we move on to Lacage, do you have a favorite song from Something Rotten?
Oh, do I have a favorite song from Something Rotten? Wow. Let me look at this list.
I can go because I do. We also have to rate it. I do have a favorite song, but it wasn't my favorite song in this like specific production. But I do love Right Hand Man. I am obsessed with Heidi Blickenstaff singing that on the cast recording.
Yeah. That I knew as well because it was the theme to the vlog, so I like knew the little melody to that.
Right Hand Man.
To me, I'm gonna say "Hard to Be the Bard." It's Hard to Be the Bard. I like that. Like a special secondary shout out to The Black Death, which was like the fake musical that they that was funny to me as well.
What's that? Something Black Death. That actually made us laugh so hard.
That cracked me up. That was like,
you know why?
Peak comedy to me.
Because it wasn't a musical reference. It was just a moment.
I know. It was just silly. It was funny. It was funny in the costumes and the way that they staged it. Like, it was just silly. It was funny.
To The Black Death.
The Black Death. That was my other favorite one.
This also was a Donna Fior directed production.
Who's doing Annie.
She's also back at the festival. She took a break last year.
She was not there last
when we saw the shows last year. I will say with Something Rotten, not that I've seen the show, but I have seen clips of a bootleg. I'm not sure that anything like revolutionary was happening with the direction in this production. It seemed pretty like true to what the onstage production was. Yeah. And like obviously, as we just said, like it worked. It worked. So
it's working.
Choreography. Strong. We loved it.
Yeah. Stratford has fantastic dancers. Stratford has really, really great dancers.
Including Heather Cossack and Devin Michael Brown.
Of course. And that's specifically what I'm speaking of. But so many really fantastic dancers at Stratford Festival.
Okay,
so
now...
I always know I'm getting quality. Do we want to rate it?
Oh, I thought we were going to rate it at the end.
Oh, we're going to rate them at the end. Okay. Let's go.
Let's go back to our true segue into Tom Allison direction.
Tom Allison.
And our second show of that day, which was La Cage aux Folles. So before we give thoughts, what was your relationship to this show before you saw it?
I had no relationship to the show before I saw it. I was somewhat familiar with the plot of La Cage aux Folles, and I knew kind of the iconic song, I Am What I Am. So again, I went in with maybe general knowledge, but I knew Harvey Fierstein's involvement in it as well. So I kind of didn't go in completely blind, but fairly blind. Like I was, there were turns and maybe like staging moments or the way the show was paced was surprising to me, was very new to me. Okay. And even there was a moment where I had shared the plot was, the son is coming home, bringing his girlfriend to meet her family to meet his parents. But, his father is in a relationship with a man. So his stepfather dresses up as a woman or dresses in drag for them. And there was a point in the show I got to, I was like, wait, does that happen? Was I wrong? Like, I thought it was taking a different turn. And I thought I had misinterpreted. I know what I was watching the show. I was like, was I wrong? But then obviously I wasn't wrong. I got there eventually.
Yes.
But yeah, I didn't quite of know like the winding roads it took to get to certain points. So the relationship I had to the show allowed me to be surprised and like taken on a journey that like, was very moving to me. Tara, what was your relationship?
So I actually saw La Cage in the 2012-2013 Mirvish season. I have no recollection. And Chris Sieber was in that show. I just looked at the cast. Yeah. I really don't. I'm assuming he played Georges. Right? Like he wouldn't be.
That sounds right.
I don't know what other character he would play in that unless he was like her dad. But he doesn't seem like the type to be her dad. So I also feel like I kind of walked in blind for the sense that like I didn't really remember anything from the only thing that I kind of remembered was kind of funny, like that moment that Devin and Heather talked about, which was I'm
going to stop you right here. On Broadway, Christopher Sieber played Georges. On the national tour, he played Albin. So he's played both roles.
What? Wow, what a guy. But George Hamilton was in it. I know. Oh, George Hamilton was George. I remember this now. Oh my God, I'm having a moment. I'm literally having like a flashback vision.
You're like, coming at that so Raven.
You know why George Hamilton? Because I remember at the time I was like, oh my God, the guy from Casper and Wendy. He's like, plays a pivotal moment in Casper. Yes. Wow. Chris Sieber was Zaza.
Albert.
So maybe that's why I don't. Wow, he must have been so good. But also like, Chris Sieber. Can really do it all.
Wow.
Speaking of the prom, we're really tying everything in here today.
We're really tied all together.
But yeah, I remember
this is also a musical comedy, but different.
It is, but there's like a serious tone to it.
Yes,
that's
yes.
so true. Yeah. I remember the like birdcage number. That's really all I remember from that Mirvish production. And I was also like pretty young when I saw it, so it was like 20. No. It was a long time ago. And then watching this production, it also kind of felt like new to me. I mean, I'm just going to cut to it right now. I loved this. Like, loved.
Same.
And I think the show itself is super strong. I think the book is really strong. It's really well paced, as you said.
Shout out to Harvey Fierstein.
Shout out.
For writing that book.
I really do think that this was a case for me specifically of like Steve Ross was match made in heaven to this character and really took the performance like over the edge. And I was so invested in the journey of Alban and Georges and like Zaza's journey. Like I was so... It didn't feel like I was watching like a show. It felt like I was watching someone's real life. Like, and that's a true like testament to Steve Ross and like what he gave to that character. If there's any like, do the Doors do Stratford? They don't, right?
I don't think so. They're Toronto.
If there's any like Stratford like awards, like give it to Steve Ross. And like we've spoken about him previously. We also talked to Devin and Heather about him specifically, but like. I was reading another article by Joshua Chong for The Star, and he saw La Cage, and he was like, I've kind of been following Steve Ross's career for a while, and to see him actually get this like breakout role, he's always kind of like the right-hand man character. He's never really like the leading man. So to see him completely transform and take on this role, like... we were in tears. Like I loved this show, and I would recommend this over Something Rotten, which I know is not what the internet is saying.
I know. I do think you have to like, let's say like read your audience on who to recommend these to, because we were with Shara, who I don't think cared for either of these shows,
but really did not care for La Cage.
Yeah, but less La Cage.
Meanwhile, me and you were just like wiping tears.
No, I agree. Was so moved by La Cage aux Folles, and I think a lot of that is Steve Ross. I think a lot of that is the book. I think a lot of that is Tom Allison's direction, and in the way like moments are just allowed to sit and breathe, like so human and real. And yeah, it felt like you were eavesdropping on this like real family's conversations,
which I think is how we felt.
Out. Like it was so moving.
But I think that's how we felt for Rent too. Rent was also directed by Tom Allison, and he like specifically. I'm thinking specifically. I'm gonna get emotional about this too, about the like Collins Angel storyline. I've never seen so much care put into those two characters before in a production, and I felt like it was very similar with the relationship between Georges and Alban. Like. They had such great chemistry together too. Like it was so good.
They had, you know, time was given to allow them to establish their relationship and their love, and even to establish the relationship with like Jean-Michel.
Shout out, loved him. He was so good.
Jean-Michel. So that when Jean-Michel was asking this of Georges, of Alban, like you felt the hurt because you had felt the love already between them. So it just really like no second of the show was wasted. Every second, every line, every moment, every look, every costume was telling the story, was storytelling. And I think that's why it was so strong. And again, I do think, you know, having a good base of like picking a really great show to work with, like puts you already like 2 steps ahead of anything else. Like picking something that is of such quality, in my opinion,
it's interesting,
like, allows you to take that room.
It's interesting because I was looking at like awards for La Cage. It was originally on Broadway in 1984. It was the 1984 Tony Awards. It was nominated for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 awards, and it won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, including Best Musical and Best Book of a Musical. But then it went on to be revived in 2010, and Sorry, it went on to be revived in 2004 and then 2010, and each time it's won Best Revival. So like, it holds up. It's not a show that was like, oh, it was good the first time, and then when it was brought back, it just wasn't as good. We should say, because I don't even think we said in our interview episode, this is originally based on the movie The Birdcage. There is a La Cage aux Folles movie as well, but like the original is The Birdcage. But I agree. I think, remember we were in the theater and I was like, has Harvey Fierstein ever been in this show? I know he wrote it, but like, has he ever been in the show? And he was.
Yes.
He was in the show, and
he replaced, I believe.
Yes, but I definitely agree. I just think like this book is really strong, and there are like it's a very like thoughtful human story, like all the way down to, you know, when Heather was talking to us about her character Anne and how like she's kind of the one that we've said like she breaks the mold, and like she's the one that says like it's okay. Like every character. I loved what she said about how Anne is quiet the whole way through until she has something so important to say. So that's the book. Like that's not the direction. That's not the production. Like that's the book itself. So I think having such a strong book is, as you said, like just such a great base to propel your show to what it is. But like really, Steve Ross is doing it. Like he's doing the most.
Is doing so much. And you know, we talked about this a bit in our interview, but like want to talk about again how we've spoken a little bit about, you know, the gag of a man dressing up as a woman as being your primary joke of a show, you know, or not even your primary joke, but just being, let's say, a joke in the show, and how it's getting like a bit tired. Whereas this show, like, it's not a gag in any way. It is authentic to the character. It is such an integral part of the storytelling. Like, obviously it's humorous when Albin comes out as Zaza to, you know, meet Anne's parents. Like, that is a funny moment, but it is so authentic to the character, to the storytelling, and it is saying something about society. It is saying something about expectations and gender roles and family, and it is saying so much, and is not just thrown away for a quick laugh in this show. It is so authentic and like thoughtful in the way that like this whole show is put together and this whole story is put together. And yeah, I was just like really like moved by this family story, and you know what Jean-Michel was asking, and the reactions to it, and kind of the complicated emotions everyone was having. I was such a fan of this production and of this show, and I don't think I expected to feel that way going in.
Yeah. I also want to shout out again Stratford and their like consideration of bringing in drag performers for these shows. I think it's so important for storylines. As consultant. Devin told us that Pearl Harbor worked on this show, as they did for Chicago as well. So I just think it's like Stratford is really committed to doing the work for these things, and I think it's really important, and I think it shows as an audience member, like I feel like we're in good hands because they're in good hands. And it's just really nice to see, because I think a lot of the time like that stuff gets just like tossed aside because this musical has been out for X number of years, and like why reopen something that doesn't need to be reopened. So I really do appreciate that Stratford like goes to the lengths to make sure that they're like authentically telling these stories. Do you have a favorite song other than I Am What I Am?
I do. The moment that really, really moved me was The Best of Times, which is the song that Albin sings at the dinner when both families have gone out to dinner at this restaurant, and you know they ask her at that time to sing, and she sings this beautiful song and gets, you know, the whole family, including Anne's family and parents, dancing at this restaurant. Not only did I think the song was so moving, but I also really loved how they staged it, kind of circling this table and circling the restaurant. And I went and watched the Tony performance, because that's what they did at the Tonys, I think the most recent Broadway revival. And I was like, oh, I mean, maybe just the first one I saw, but I really, really preferred the way Stratford staged it. I really thought it was such beautiful staging,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of really was like such beautiful storytelling. Like every second of that show was beautiful storytelling.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, nothing was wasted. No moments were wasted. So yeah, that was my favorite song and my favorite moment from the show. What about you, Tara?
I do love that song. I also love I Am What I Am, but I really love the intro. I think it sets up the theme of the entire show. We get that we are what we are all the way through, and it's like so important to establish it right at the beginning, and I really like the way that they did it in this production as well. But I think it's just like it's a smart like process to be like, this is what we want people to walk away like humming, so we're gonna give it to you at the top, we're gonna give it to you in the middle, we're gonna give it to you at the end. So I also was obsessed with the giant mascara. I loved it so much. There was really fun props in this. The dancers in this were also doing like an amazing job, so it was a really fun show.
I even love, let's say, like the makeup design, in that it's not so perfect, like that it looks a little bit messy. Like these guys are doing it themselves. The drag queens are doing it themselves, and I don't know, it felt like this grungy club in the south of France, you know, not
it's funny,
too perfect, not too specific.
Because you made the Tom Allison segue from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, but like the French Riviera is also a segue.
I know, it's so true. It's so true. Why is everything in the French Riviera? It's glamorous. It's beautiful. We were there last year. We know. It's
well,
beautiful.
you know that scene when like Georges like is telling Alban about the whole process, and they're like sitting, and there's like the person that's playing the, what's it called?
Yeah.
You know
like,
what I'm doing?
The accordion.
Like, the background was beautiful, and they had all of these like different chairs out. Yeah, it's also, we should say, like, so many of the performers that we had seen in the afternoon were also in the evening performance. So like they
double
were
cast.
also part of that 2-show day in the double cast, which it's
so much work. Crazy.
It's so much work. It's always so much work for these Stratford actors. But we were saying it's kind of like nice for us to see stuff like that, because you see a person in the afternoon show and you're like, oh, I kind of liked what you were doing better in the evening show, or I kind of like what you were doing better in the afternoon show. So it's like they get to stretch those different muscles too. We say this all the time about Stratford productions, but like these are maybe some of the hardest working actors in the country
to work in rep. For
Shaw Festival does it
contract.
too. So
Shaw as well.
Both, yeah. But yeah, to work and rep on an extended contract is no joke. It's really no joke.
And 2 like elaborate musicals with heavy dancing, heavy singing, makeup, costume. Like it is a lot. It is so much work for everyone at the festival, but we see the actors really like working and transitioning from one show to another. And just bringing something different to both shows.
So, like, truly shout out to the ensembles, because they're the people that are really doing the most.
Yeah, like, even talking about Steve Ross, you know, we saw him give such a funny performance in the afternoon in Something Rotten, and then we saw him do something completely different.
I couldn't believe. It was like it was a full transformation. Like, it was incredible. Like,
imagine doing that both in one day.
I can't. That's why I'm here and not there, you know? That's why I sit behind a computer and talk about my feelings
and
live
judge.
on the internet.
Shit.
And judge. Both of these shows have been extended until November, and we should be getting more information about the rest of the Stratford season. I mean, it's confirmed the musicals, but they themselves haven't confirmed it. So
yeah, they haven't put a season announcement.
We will confirm everything, like double confirm it when we do our season preview for Toronto and surrounding areas a little bit later this year. Actually, probably next month is when it will come out. So let's rate these. Let's start back with Something Rotten. What are you rating this?
I'm gonna give this. This is really hard.
I would like you. No, never mind. I'm not going to say it. I was going to say, think back to what you've previously rated things.
No, I know. I am thinking. What I've previously rated things. I'm worried. Okay, I'm going to rate this a 5 out of 10 leather pants.
Okay.
That Shakespeare is wearing.
What
about you, Tara? What's your rating?
I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I don't know.
I almost went 6, but then I was like, be bold. Okay, go ahead.
But I don't know if he uses it in this, but you know the like, oh, he does use the skull head.
Like the skull?
Yeah, the Shakespearean skull head. Which is absolutely crazy when I'm about to give the next rating, and it's like not that much higher, but it just feels so different. One level higher 1 or 2 levels higher feels so different. for these shows. Okay, so La Cage, what are you giving it?
I am going to give it 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Wow. I don't know. What was a prop in this show? Like, who's the maid? The birdcage? 9 out of 10
Wait, sorry.
Shout out.
There's actually two people that I would like to shout out here. I would like to shout out James Daly for his work as Jean-Michel in those beige pants.
Yeah.
And I would also like to shout out
Chris Vergara as Jacob. I think I got it here. Yeah, that's what it is. Sorry.
What an icon.
Amazing. Sorry, we're like,
what
what's the character's name again? An icon. So I don't even know if he has one, but 9 out of 10 feather dusters.
Actually, sorry, I would really just like to shout out Kevin Coovey, who was our most iconic ensemble member of the day. You know who it is.
Yes. Oh, I do know. He was in Brigadoon at Shaw last year. And I was like, from Brigadoon.
He was our most iconic ensemble member of the day.
It was fun.
Kevin Coovey McLaughlin?
Yeah.
He was like an ensemble in both shows. Yeah. I don't really remember him in Something Rotten, but I definitely remember him in La Cage.
Yeah, I remember him in Something Rotten. I think he was wearing leather. If I had to guess.
He was a bard boy, whatever they are. Dream.
Yeah, one of those.
Midsummer Night's Dreamboat.
Midsummer Night's Dreamboats. Yes, that's what they were called.
Okay, I'm gonna give this 8 out of 10.
Wow, 8.
Bird
one
cages.
more.
I know, that's what I said. That's what I said. It feels crazy to only give one more. But
you're like, think about what you've given before.
No, but 9 feels so high. 9 feels so high. I've only really dropped a 9 like once before. I've really dropped a 10 only one time. I'll never give a 10 again. I keep saying
10,
this.
but then I was like, I can't give a 10.
You almost gave a 10?
I almost gave a 10, but I was like, that's too much. It's crazy.
Like, really again, if we were gonna give like other points here, like this is an 8.5 to me. But I'm not gonna go that route. I know it sounds crazy when you only give a point higher, but like it makes a difference. It's only out of 10.
Yeah. I know it's only out of 10. Out of 100. 70.
Maybe we should do that.
No.
85%.
No, we can't beat up 100. Out of 10.
Anyway, that's our thoughts on the musicals at this season's Stratford Festival, Something Rotten and La Cage aux Folles. As I said, these are both extended until November. And if you are in the Toronto area, check their website because there are buses that go from Toronto to Stratford. We've never been on them, but we see them every time we're there.
Should we take a bus to review just to see what happens? No.
I wonder what time I wonder how much time they give to get there.
I wonder what time they leave in the morning. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And do they pick up from like Union or from in front of the Mirvish theaters?
I thought they picked up from the Mirvish theaters, but maybe it's changed. We see the buses every time. Maybe we should ask somebody next time we're in Stratford.
Where does it pick you at?
Yeah. And when are you going back? Yeah.
We usually see the buses like right after the show. Like people are waiting for the bus right after the show. So I think they go home right after.
Yeah.
Which is correct, I think.
But I actually think there was a school group at Something Rotten because there was lots of school buses around that day as well.
Yeah, like a summer camp or something.
Yes. So yeah, those are our thoughts on the shows for this season of the festival. We will talk about the festival next year when we get there. But until then, it's now time for our Obsession of the Week. Okay, Steph. What's your obsession?
My obsession this week is a song from a musical that I'm not super familiar with, but I believe it played in the West End, or in the UK at least, and it is from the musical Lizzie, about Lizzie Borden. And it's a song called This Is Not Love, performed by Lauren Drew. And really what I need to shout out is Lauren Drew has a gorgeous voice, and this song just uses her voice to perfection. And I love just hearing new songs from musicals I'm not familiar with, just to try and get like what's happening over in the UK. What are they doing?
There's some fun stuff happening over
There's
in the
some
UK.
fun things, and I do think they're in some ways maybe a little more creative, or they take a few more risks.
So I find so much like original content is being produced there.
They do shorter runs. Like not everything has to be like the next big hit there. Like I feel like in the UK, because it's cheaper to produce a little bit, so I do wonder maybe what are working conditions like? How does that work? I don't know. I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to is I do think it fosters an environment where more people get opportunities to put up shows, and audiences get opportunities to see things for a little bit cheaper, and to see newer, maybe more original work, or maybe originally staged things. Like, I don't know. Anytime I hear of something interesting happening, I'm like, it's definitely not here. It's definitely in the UK.
No, I always think about you seeing everybody's talking about Jamie and how that was like something like that. That was
exactly. Which
not
I think
going to Broadway.
Is it still running? No, I think it's closed.
I don't know. Maybe it's on tour.
I think it might be closed, but yeah. But it ran for years. It had many replacement casts.
But it was such a successful show in the UK. It was never going to transfer, but like you went to it because you were like, I want to see something that's like authentic to the UK, and then ended up loving it.
I think I'd seen one YouTube clip, and we were deciding. It was our last night in London, actually, and the last time I was in London in 2018. Gotta go back, and I was deciding between Dreamgirls or everybody's talking about Jamie, and I was like, let's see this. Like,
okay, but Dreamgirls was iconic.
I know. But eventually I will see a production of Dreamgirls, you know? I think that's more likely to be revived.
If we were in Sweden for like an extra 2 weeks, we could have seen it in Swedish.
Wow. That would be so interesting to see Dreamgirls.
It would be crazy.
But anyway, yeah, this musical explores the life of Lizzie Borden, who was accused of murdering her father and stepmother with an axe in the late summer of 1892.
Sorry, the way that you just casually was like, yeah, so anyway.
Reading the summary, Lizzie delves into the titular character's complex psyche and speculates on the motivations she may have had. And this is kind of the single, This Is Not Love from Lizzie the Musical. Check it out.
Is it like
something interesting, something
horror
new.
musical? Now I'm so curious.
I wonder. That's a really good question if it's a horror musical. I don't
What's
really have
the
more
vibe
context
of the
for
song?
You. Like pop ballad.
Okay.
Gotta be honest.
Ballady.
Yeah, like a pop song, like nothing shocking.
Look, as an American Psycho lover, this tracks for you.
No, it does track. I also feel like maybe Kristen Stewart is playing Lizzie Borden in a movie. They're doing something like that, but
okay,
don't quote me on that.
Great.
Okay, Tara, what's your obsession this week?
Mine is also kind of from like possibly a makeshift musical, possibly just a concept album. I've talked about him before as a like composer, writer. Joey Contreras. I'm gonna say that completely wrong. But there's a new song. So I talked about a song from In Pieces, but I think this is a bonus song from In Pieces the musical. And this is a song called Bloom, and it's featuring our favorite Antonio Cipriano and also Stephanie Torrens, who, if you remember the name Stephanie Torrens, she was like the Jenna understudy in Waitress.
She was there that whole time.
She really saved the day whenever she needed to. It's kind of about like her asking him out, and they talk about like their relationship blooming. They sound beautiful together. And it just like, I went down an Antonio hole recently, and that's how I found this. And I'm just like, Antonio, I know that you're making TV money, but like, go back to Broadway.
Come back to
He's so good. His voice is so great. I recently found his, when he did the like TikTok reactions or whatever to the Bridgerton musical, and I just like remember loving them then. Also, all of his and Renee videos. So sad that they broke up.
Wow,
like, it's fine. They're both happy now. They're both happy now in different relationships.
Everyone's doing well.
Everyone's doing great. But when they sang together, it really was wonderful. But yeah, it's nice to hear him on like a cast recording, because I feel like the only other time we hear him on a cast recording is Jagged Little Pill. So it's nice to hear him in like a mixed environment. Else. Yeah,
for sure.
And yeah, I would love to see him back on stage, because I feel like he's so young and he's so talented, and it would really, to me, be a waste to like use those talents only on TV. But I respect that the paycheck is much higher. So
for sure.
Hope you're doing well, Antonio. Did we ever talk about the fact that that you have a cameo from him?
I think it did come up that I have a cameo from Antonio. I got it for my birthday. What was it, 2020? So my 27th birthday, my gift was a cameo from Antonio. He sang Happy Birthday. What a time.
What a time.
2020.
Should I insert the clip right now?
You should.
Happy Birthday is public domain. So
Happy Birthday is public domain. And I actually do feel like we have inserted a clip before, but like put it back.
Okay, great.
Put it in again.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Stefania. I believe she gave me the pronunciation. Happy birthday to you. Happy 27th birthday, Stefania. I hope you're having the absolute best day. Thank you so much for seeing Jagged Little Pill and loving it so much. I really, really appreciate it. I hope that when everything is able to come back and you're able to come see the show again, and I'm able to see you at the stage door, and we're able to hang out, But that video really made me happy. You guys jumping around and singing some Jagged Little Pill. Love you guys so much.
Well, here's happy birthday.
It was a wonderful gift. Shout out to Alessandra, Ariana, Krizia, Michaela. Shout out to them for my beautiful gift. It was also a Sephora gift card, so it was a good day.
And we still don't believe that your last name is Cipriano, so...
It's got to be that
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
Italian.
Anyway, that's my obsession of the week. That's our thoughts on the Stratford Festival. And that's the end of this episode. So if you want to listen to any of our other episodes, you can do that by subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a comment.
And you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Off2BOA Podcast with the number 2. I'm trying to get back to Twitter.
I see that.
You see me on Twitter tweeting at Empire Records. What's the runtime?
But should we be calling it X? No.
Should we be calling it X? Sorry, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm about to dead name Twitter. Sorry.
Sorry, Elon.
And sorry to Elon. And you can follow us on TikTok at Off2Broadway, also with the number 2. We're over there as well, posting sometimes, fun stuff, hoping to have a vlog of what we did. Not a vlog, but a little recap of what we did on our day at Stratford.
Yes.
Up for this episode too. So
yeah,
check it out.
And we'll see you guys next time for another episode.
Bye.